Pittsburgh Steeler fans, welcome back to another episode of the Scho Bro Show. It is Tuesday night. It is approximately 9 p.m. Eastern. Where else you going to be than with me, Dave Schofield, co-editor behind thesteelcurtain.com, and with me as always, also with us, of course, because he's always here, is my big brother Rich. Rich, how are you doing tonight?
Hey, Steeler fans. Draft is over. No more mock draft crap.
What are you talking about? Andrew Wilbar in the live chat, he's already working on his first mock draft for next year. So, I mean, they have him out for next year. So he figures, I might as well jump in and do one. So
McShay already did his and thinks the Steelers are taking a quarterback.
Yep. And you know what? We'll have to see what Andrew thinks. Well, that'll be interesting to see. But we're here. We're with you. I'm losing my voice a little bit. I had a softball game tonight. It was cold. I'm still out there in my shorts and shorts but I mean, but it's funny. Everyone else is wearing jackets and stuff. Not me. I'm out there in regular stuff. But now I feel like I'm losing my voice.
Kyle had a baseball game night. What temperature did you have?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't pay attention to the temperature. The problem was we had a lot of wind. It's very windy when we play softball. But
yeah, we had wind too. It was chilly. People were bundled up in the winter coats and gloves. I actually, you'll find it's hard to believe, I wore jeans.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well,
I very seldom do that.
Well, you very seldom. For those of you that don't know, I wear shorts year round. It's very, very unusual, especially since I no longer have my old day job of teaching. I've been removed for that for almost, no, I still
longer than you did it.
Longer. No, not yet. Not yet.
Oh, okay.
I taught for more than 10 years, and it's almost been 10 years since I was full-time teaching. I did some part-time teaching in there, but I wear shorts all the time. That's just what I do. Even the winter, even when it's snowing. If I'm going outside to blow snow, I'll put on sweatpants. You know, that's just a little bit too far. But so I'm always wearing shorts now. But it was chilly out there. The shorts didn't bother me, and believe it or not, I had short sleeves. My arms were fine. My hands got cold. It was just one of those crazy ones.
Reginald says, I thought you two live in the same state.
We
do. But we live at about a 2,200 foot difference in altitude.
And people think that I live in the mountains. I don't live in the mountains. Although there's a mountain there and a mountain there, I live in between the mountains. You live on top of the mountains. You know, yes. to get from my house to your house, you go up a mountain, and then you might dip a little bit, and then you go up another mountain, and then it's a little bit, and then you just go up and up and up and up.
Keep climbing the steps.
Keep climbing the steps. And you know what? Because where you live, you're very similar to Pittsburgh. It's very similar weather, a lot of the same stuff. For me, I'm unfortunately closer to that purple team. So speaking of Steelers, speaking of Pittsburgh, we've got not a lot of news to talk about this time of year. I got to bring up what the news that's coming, and that's because it's important from a programming note. And that is tomorrow, we will finally find out when the Steelers play their games and during the 2021 season. We already know who they're playing. We already know the games that are home and away. We just don't know the order of operations. We don't know which one are primetime games, when they play on Thursday, although there was a rumor about that one that might have been leaked. We'll see if that one was true. I heard a rumor week 14 in Minnesota. That would be like December 15th. That would be very interesting. But it doesn't matter because Minnesota plays inside. So, you know, whoop-de-doo. But no, the problem actually is getting there sometimes when it comes to that. But we don't know if I heard that as a random thing. I have no idea if there's any credence to that or not.
We'll find out now, won't we?
Well, in 24 hours, we will know the answer. The NFL is actually doing something different. And when Michael Beck shared this with us today, I said, this is actually kind of a brilliant strategy. They are actually brilliant. Yes. They're releasing the week 1 schedule on the various morning shows of the networks that carry the NFL. So we'll know the Steelers' week 1 opponent Wednesday morning. Then we'll know the rest of the opponents throughout the day. So that's going to be pretty interesting to know and to see how that works out. And because of that, if you tune in tomorrow night looking for the curtain call, you're going to be surprised because the curtain call was being moved to Thursday night this week. The Steelers preview is being bumped up one night. So it'll be myself, Jeff Hartman, Brian Anthony Davis. We always do a special preview show when the schedule is released. So we wanted to do it that night. So we made the old switcheroo for a week. And then if you turn in Thursday night thinking you're going to see the preview, you're going to get the curtain call. That's just the way it's going to be this week. But you're going to get the same shows, just those two switched up. So I'm excited about getting the schedule. I did an article, I think it might have been over the weekend, I can't remember, they all run together, that I said, I think the most important thing to look for in the schedule is that bye week. I've never been, the bye week's all that important kind of person until last year when I saw how important that bye week was. When it happened and the Steelers lost their bye week and it got moved up, I'm like, you know what? It is what it is. You got to overcome. You got to know what you're doing. You got to, I tell you, they didn't have a bye last year, and the one that they did have was week 4, but they didn't get to really have it. So I would really like the NFL to give them a nice little favor and give them a late bye week. Do you think when the bye week occurs really matters, Rich?
Well, I'll tell you what, week 4, when it supposedly happened but didn't happen, that's not cool.
No, that's not cool.
I think you gain an advantage if you're week maybe 7, but really 8 on is more of an advantage.
Absolutely. I completely agree. If you look at the two teams that were represented each conference in the Super Bowl this past year, the AFC representative had a bye in week 10, and the NFC representative had a bye in week 13. Yes, 13. Didn't even realize they were still buys by week 13. I thought they were done week 11 because week 12 with Thanksgiving. I thought they were done. And I'm like, what? There's 2 more teams that still have a bye? Yep. And guess what? You know how many games and they won every game after their bye week. Tampa Bay won every game after their bye week. They only had 4 games left in the regular season. They won all 4 of them, and then they won their 4 in the postseason. They won 8 straight games out of their bye week. You know what's crazy? So did the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers won 8 straight games out of their bye week, but unfortunately, they still had 6 more games to play and only went 1 and 5. So take it for what it's worth. Of course, it depends on your opponents, everything else. But yeah, I'm hoping that I'd like nothing better than to look and see the Steelers bye week being double digits. I would love a double digit bye week with the 18 weeks. And
I deal with 9.
Yep. 9. I mean, 9's right smack dab in the middle.
I know. If we're before week 9, I'm going to feel like the NFL screwed us.
Yeah. And they started bye week. It's funny. The Steelers and Titans had bye weeks in week 8 last year. Week 4 last year. Week 8 is what it was supposed to be. Week 4, no teams were supposed to have a bye that early. Now, the NFL was done buys that early before because, we remember back from 99 through 2001, there was only 31 teams. So there was a bye every week. So some teams had their bye week 1. Some teams had their bye week 17. I remember in 2001, it was supposed to be, I think week 16 was supposed to be the Chargers because it really made it interesting from a fantasy football perspective because you could possibly have like your best player on bye in the championship. But anyway, but things got thrown out in 2001 when they had to move week 2 to the end of the season and things like that because of 9/11. But it was week 5 was the earliest bye week they scheduled last year. Do you think they go that early with the 17-game schedule, or do you think they bump it to at least 6, if not 7, before they even get started?
Who knows? It's the NFL.
I know. They should make them later. They
don't always do things that make sense. So,
well, and here's why. This is why this should make sense. You should not have anyone on a bye. I think before week 7, because you're in essence getting you kind of are getting a second bye this year. But it's everyone basically has a week 0 bye, if you think about it, because they're doing the 3 preseason games in what would normally be week 1, 2, and 3. Right. And you've got an extra weekend in there with no preseason games, which basically you could call it the week 4 of the preseason bye, however you want to say it. So if you're having that extra week there, I still don't know when they're going to make the teams cut down to 53, if it'll be 2 days after the last game or if they're going to give them the extra week and then cut down. I'm not sure. But if you're having that time off there, having a bye 4 weeks later isn't that big of a deal because you've already had that. And I mean, granted, a lot of starters don't even play in week 4 anyway, but specifically not even prepping for a game there, I think they should bump them a little bit later, but we'll see. We've talked about buys for an awful long time here. So, but I'm excited about the schedule. Bye. Excited about the schedule. I told you about the programming notes. We're going to have the information for you at behindthesteelcurtain.com, your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll have the schedule out as soon as it's released. We'll have some breakdown of it. Always looking at those interesting things. And right now on the website, if you go, we have a rumor tracker. Jeff already got that article up and going that he's adding to it. If there's any rumors around the NFL of any leaks that, so-and-so's playing this week, like I know Michael Beck posted one to the rest of the staff that showed, I think it was supposed to be the Bears and the Rams on Sunday Night Football in week 1, which disappointed me because both Brian Anthony Davis and I predicted Steelers Browns Sunday Night Football week 1. So I guess we might be off on that one. But if you want to know any of those rumors, go to the website. It's there. You can look through them. It should be the top story there. And we'll update it tomorrow throughout the day, kicking the timestamp up to, if you see it move back to the top of the page, that means there's been an update. That's kind of how that works. So a lot of people were talking about the draft. Richard, do you like talking about the draft after the fact? Is that so bad?
No, but I wanted you to bring up one more point.
Oh, what's the one more point?
I think it was you that stuck it on the Slack channel today, and it has me excited. The 51,000.
Oh, yes. I went to bring that up as the other news thing, and then I forgot about it. I didn't read the exact date. They say it's coming. I didn't know if it was this Friday or if it's June 1st. I'm not sure
I don't know
what the date was.
I've been seeing so many different things from so many different states and dates. It's hard for me to keep track which state is which up here. Between me hearing Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania. Yeah.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I think it's soon because I think it affects the Penguins playoffs. But the state of Pennsylvania is upping the amount of people that are allowed at sporting venues, and with Heinz Field being an outdoor venue, right now the number for Heinz Field, if they were to play 2 weeks from now, would be 51,000 people. 51. That's more than half.
Yeah,
because it's 68.7, I think, is what the capacity is. 68,750. I got someone that brought it up here. Sherry Richards, who's on Facebook, says May 17th. That sounds right. I can believe that. Well, take your word for it. I know it's coming up soon, but that's just for now. That means by September, it could even be more. But man, just getting 50,000 people in Heinz Field this fall would be absolutely fantastic. Get those terrible towels going. I can't wait to get back there. I know you can't wait to get back there.
Warm up the season tickets.
Yep. Warm them up, ready to go. So that was some really good news. I'm glad you helped me remember to bring that up. But for our topic tonight, as we're finally getting to it, but our topic, you know what our topic is every week? The Pittsburgh Steelers.
Whatever I want to talk about.
Whatever we want to talk about with the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I said whatever I want to talk about, but that's not right. It's usually what you want to talk about.
Well, actually, you inspired me for this topic tonight. You don't even know.
Oh, that's because I'm an inspiring kind of guy.
You're an inspiring kind of guy. Well, everyone else is talking about the Steelers draft. So while everyone's going to talk about the draft, we're going to talk about what didn't happen in the draft. And
okay.
Let's talk about something that didn't happen. And you got me thinking, because you just randomly texted me lyrics to a song this weekend. And you randomly texted me lyrics to the song.
Yeah, the song was stuck in my head, so I
by Steve Miller Band, not one of their more popular ones, but it's the song "Wide River." And I just naturally made the step from Wide River to wide receiver. So we're going to talk about wide receiver. So thank you for that inspiration.
You're welcome.
That's how we got there. But the Pittsburgh Steelers, for the first time in 10 years, did not draft a wide receiver. It was 2011, the last time they did not draft a wide receiver. That's the only year under Mike Tomlin that they didn't draft a wide receiver. I mean, I think I'd have to look it up. I have it here somewhere. It would be like maybe at least three times they drafted two wide receivers. But this year was the first time they had none since 2011. Now, you got to look at the circumstances of why they might not draft a wide receiver. In 2011, they were coming off of drafting two wide receivers the year before. They took one fairly high, which would now be considered a day 2 pick in Emmanuel Sanders. And then they also took a late flyer on this guy called Antonio Brown. And because of their rookie seasons and the way they were working out, there wasn't a reason to draft one the next year. So this year going into it, you thought maybe the Steelers would go wide receiver. A lot of people thought they were, they didn't have to go high. Maybe at the earliest, the end of day 2, if they really wanted a 3rd round pick, but probably maybe a 4th. They didn't have a 5th. Maybe take a flyer late, see what they could do. But then they signed back Juju Smith-Schuster.
Yeah, I was going to say, as soon as Juju signed back, threw it out the window. They said, hey, there's something we don't have to do. Let's send our focus elsewhere in the draft.
Yeah, so they have back the same 5 wide receivers from last year. And I was talking to one, Jefferson Bartholomew Hartman, today, and he said, I'm actually surprised that they didn't draft one this past year anyway, because it's what they do to get ready. And I said, the problem is, are you going to keep 6 or are you not? Are you going to keep 6 kind of thinking, which they've done in the past plenty of times, and mainly only use Ray as a returner, or have someone who might not be active? And I got to give this to Jeff. He thought that they might trade someone like a James Washington and, for a late round draft pick and draft another receiver. Now, they didn't do it. But I also think it's very telling about what the Steelers did in this year's draft. Because I've said it so many times that I feel that the Steelers draft not for this year, but for the next year.
Right.
I don't think they did that in 2021. Do you?
No.
I don't think so either. And I don't think they could because of the salary cap situation and everything. Actually, I mean, they did, but not as much as they have.
But they were drafting need over looking a year ahead. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It wasn't look, hey, Juju will be a free agent again next year. They didn't look at those things. They didn't.
Yeah.
Because they had so many, I don't want to call them glaring, but really I mean, they had spots that they just really needed filled.
Yeah, they did. They really did. And I think they checked a lot of boxes with their draft. Like I said, those people that aren't paying attention to them.
They needed to fill them on the cheap too, because we were up against the cap.
Go up against the cap with that situation. And I mean, there's so many people. I even did an article today about how, Pro Football Focus put another article out there about talking about how the Steelers' poor draft. It's funny. You call it a poor draft, but you didn't grade it poor. You graded it average. Anyway, shows that they are in rebuild mode. And I'm like, the only reason they're calling it a poor draft is because they're going to give an awful grade to anyone who drafts a running back before round 3. I'm not big on running backs in round 1. I'm actually going to talk about that in this week's Steelers Stat Geek, so make sure you tune into that. That's on the audio-only side of our podcast platform. But that instantly right there knocked down the Steelers. But I kind of ripped into them and had some fun with that today, so that made some good, something for me to vent about. But when you look at it, the Steelers really did draft some things that they had to have this season. But look at last year's draft. Now, granted, Minka Fitzpatrick was the first round pick. You know that, but then they had him. But even Chase Claypool, who was a big contributor last year, didn't even have to contribute last year. He was mainly the next wide receiver for when the last one moves on, when Juju possibly moved on. They wanted to make sure they had him and have some experience for this year. Alex Highsmith wasn't brought in to be a starter at outside linebacker. He was drafted to be that rotational guy. And then if they couldn't sign Dupree, he could step up the next year. Then you look at Anthony McFarland. He wasn't, he was kind of drafted to see what he could do as James Conner moved on, to see if he was a guy capable of that. And the fact that they went running back in round 1 kind of showed you that they didn't get the same vibe. Right. Which I didn't when they drafted him, but that's beside the point. Then you get someone like Kevin Dotson, who was really your best lineman last year, but couldn't get on the field because that wasn't the plan the whole time, it seemed like. And then even, then you had, Brooks got some playing time. That was maybe some depth at safety. And then Carlos Davis, who actually then, they didn't have to have a defensive tackle right then. And now it seems like they had that for depth. Every move that they made last year was basically to address possibly losing someone the following year. Like the Steelers, they weren't going to have Wormley and Alualu for this year necessarily, but they still managed to get them both. So a lot of times I look at who I think the Steelers are going to draft, and I look at who could they lose after this season, and that's what they might be trying to fill in. But that was not how it was this year. That wasn't how it worked. Because if it was, they'd probably draft 2 wide receivers. Because how many wide receivers do they have under contract for 2022?
Hold on. 1.
2.
Oh, is it 2? Who's the other one? Oh,
it's Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool.
Gotcha.
Those are the only receivers they have under contract for 2022. So it would have been a big Steelers move to go ahead and draft a wide receiver or 2 to make sure that you have those guys, because Ray McLeod came back 1-year deal. Juju Smith-Schuster came back 1-year deal. Yes, he has void years on there, but only one year that he's got where he's got a base salary and is under contract. He is a free agent come next year. James Washington gets to the end of his rookie deal. So, and then any of the guys they had off the practice squad or brought in as undrafted free agents, those are all guys that are, it's really 1 year. Now, if any of the undrafted free agents make it, then you're talking about having them as like, exclusive rights free agents and things like that. You could have, but first they would actually have to make the team ahead of the other guys that they have now. So if you just look at the projected 5 that they're going to keep the same 5, they only got 2 back next year. So question number 1, Juju already signed his deal this offseason, so you're not looking at a new deal for him. Ray already signed his 1-year deal to come back, so you're not talking a new deal for him. The only wide receiver they have that they could work out a long-term deal before the season starts to keep around for 2022 and beyond is James Washington. Yep. Do you think the Steelers try to keep James Washington by extending him before the start of the 2021 season?
Yeah, I would imagine there will be some talks. I don't know if anything will happen.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if they do. I honestly do, because he's still a guy that can do some fantastic things. I mean, Grandpa Strong. It just still seems like he hasn't figured out, not he, but all of them hasn't figured out exactly how he fits into the Steelers offense. Does that make sense to you?
Yep.
Could you agree with that one?
I do.
Yeah.
But the reason it wouldn't surprise me is, let's say the Steelers are looking, let's say the front office is looking at it and they say, because they would know better than we do. Yeah. James Washington like it here. Does he enjoy being in Pittsburgh? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Okay. Maybe, if he's willing to, come on at a really nice deal for another year or 2, why would you not?
Oh yeah, I love James Washington. I like his work ethic. I like, he's a farmer. I mean, what's not to like about him? He just seems like a good, humble guy. But the only question is how he feels about it. Does he feel like it's not the right fit in Pittsburgh? Does he feel it is the right fit in Pittsburgh? And he's not a guy that talks much. Some people feel like Ben Roethlisberger called him out the season before, or was it the one before that? I can't remember when he called. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But then again, last year, Ben's like, remember that one play? I can't even remember which game it was, where Ben just leaned back and just heaved the ball. It was like on a 3rd and long.
Yep, it
a
was.
ball that just seemed like it was going to be picked, and he just kind of heaved it to a spot. And they said afterwards, like, were you worried about that? He's like, I was going to James Washington. I knew if anyone was going to go pull it down, he's going to go get it.
Yeah.
So you kind of have that. I think 2021 might paint a bigger and better picture for the future of James Washington.
Yeah.
So, so other than that, you're looking at Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool. But you know what? You know whose problem that is? That's 2022's problem, because we haven't even gotten to training camp for 2021. We don't want to look past this season. This is what we're playing for. So those things will work themselves out eventually. There's no problem trying to get stuff done ahead of time, the way the Steelers do business. But what do you think of this wide receiver core that the Steelers have going into 2021? I mean, it's the same guys as last year. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? What are your thoughts?
It's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a good thing because what's not going with them to 2021 is, the guy that called those young wide receivers a bunch of farts in a skillet. That I think could be an addition by subtraction.
I feel you there. I feel you there.
I
want to see this offense, what it can do.
Right. And I have more faith in Matt Canada to build this offense and put his wide receivers and his quarterback in better positions to succeed than they did last year. And the wide receiver core was not bad last year.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
I mean, they're all young guys. Their trajectory is still on the up and up.
All right, so I got to explain it. Yes, okay, Jeff, Randy Fichtner at a news conference after a game was asked about his young wide receivers cores, and he said they're always just bouncing around everywhere like a fart in a skillet.
Yeah.
And I had no clue what he meant by that. At that point in time, I was like, this guy needs to not be our offensive coordinator. And that was that.
Yeah, that was that. So I feel what you're saying there. I mean, it seemed like they were just trying to get these balls to these receivers as quick as possible and try to make them do something. It seemed like they struggled with coming up with anything new to get it there. That was last year. I don't envision the same type of problems, but then again, whoever does, some people are like, oh, you're wearing your black and gold goggles. I mean, I don't go into a season thinking that things that worked last year or players that played well are naturally going to be worse the next year. I just don't. That's just not the way I look at it. Right. So that's kind of how it goes. We've got a lot to break down with these wide receivers. We'll talk maybe a little bit of depth chart. We'll talk about how they compare to the NFL, some other things. How are they as a strength of the team? All that. But first, we're going to go ahead and take our break. So that way we can get into that in the second part. So if you are listening on the audio side, go ahead over and click on to part 2. If you're with us here on YouTube or Facebook, we're going to go ahead and take that break now before we get into this too much. And we'll be back in just a few seconds. Pittsburgh Steeler fans, we are back with the second half of the Scho Bro Show. I am Dave Schofield, co-editor behind thesteelcurtain.com. And with me, as always, is the Big Bro Scho, my big brother, Rich. Rich, you doing all right?
Oh, just doing lovely.
Yeah. Having fun talking wide receivers?
Oh, I just have fun talking Steelers.
Yeah, exactly.
You pick the position, I'll talk about it if it has to do with the Steelers.
So we're breaking down this wide receiver group. We talked about, I think the trajectory is on the up and up for all of them. Ray McLeod's kind of the forgotten guy. He's the returner. He's the gadget guy. He's a guy that he's still going to get some snaps out there. I'm going to say something that I said last year because I think it's true again this year. Of course, you don't want to deal with like a significant long-term injury at all. We're not talking that. But we're talking about if someone's dinged up and they miss a game. I think this group of wide receivers is fine if they're missing one guy.
Yes.
If they're missing two is when you start to get worried. Because we saw it you saw Chase Claypool just thrive when Deontay Johnson was out injured. Various different things. I think especially when you're talking Eric Ebron, tight end, he's a tight end, but really they play him as a receiver when you think about it. That when you have those weapons, that even if one guy is out, the other guys will pick up the slack.
Yep. But
here's the problem with wide receiver. It kind of goes back to like when I played basketball. When you're a post player playing basketball, you've got to depend on everybody else to do stuff right for you to even have a chance to do anything. The guys, the point guard dribbling up the full court and getting it to the guards, those guys actually taking care of the ball to actually feed it into you has to happen. Then if they do what they do so many times to just ignore you and try to do their thing, they actually have to be good enough to get a shot off to give you a shot at a rebound if that's the only thing you're going to do. You are so dependent on the play of others. And I've actually seen really good post players be absolutely wasted because no one can get them the ball. The same thing goes with wide receivers. They are so dependent on so much of the rest of the offense in order for them to succeed. If you don't have a quarterback that can get in the ball, they're in trouble. If you don't have an offensive line that can protect the quarterback in order for the quarterback to get in the ball, you're in trouble. So they really are. Having a super great wide receiver room is a really great thing. The only problem is, if you don't have those other things in order to bring out the best in it. Would you agree with that? Oh,
you got it. There's got to be some balance there because, how often do you see a great wide receiving core win a Super Bowl with very little talent around them?
Yeah. Yeah. It takes, and it's great because these players are dynamic. They're the, I don't know how to say it. I don't want to call them divas or whatever, but that's kind of the personality a lot of them have embraced over the years. But they're very different from other football players. But we see what it is. They have to. There's only one ball out there that you can throw around. But I like the Steelers wide receivers because not only can they get the job done, they do really seem like an unselfish group that is just looking for the success of the whole group and not just one individual getting their stats. So,
but like you said, it takes somebody that's really good to throw on the ball. Are Lynn Swann and John Stallworth necessarily Hall of Famers if Terry Bradshaw isn't back there throwing them the ball? Maybe not. What if they're playing on a team that's, got...
You could just as easily ask, is Terry Bradshaw a Hall of Famer and 4-time Super Bowl champion if he doesn't have guys like Swann and Stallworth to throw the ball to?
Correct.
You can ask that, some great wide receivers can make good quarterbacks look great. And great quarterbacks can make good wide receivers look great. The problem is if
bad quarterbacks can make great wide receivers look
less than average. Yeah, it's just kind of how it goes. Now, last year the Steelers chucked the ball a lot. They did, what was it? 63 attempts in the wild card game, something crazy like that for the Steelers. They were chucking the ball left and right. Now, if the Steelers can get that running game going, and your number of passing attempts goes down, which means obviously the number of targets across the board goes down. Do you think that has a negative effect on the wide receivers?
No.
Neither do I. Tell me why.
If teams have to respect the run game, the yak numbers will go up.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Also, we will have better opportunity to throw what I call the intermediate deep passes.
Yeah.
Not as many maybe of those, 40, 50 yards down the field passes, but more of those, 18 to 25 yard passes.
Yeah.
There's going to be more space.
Yeah. Completely agree.
And more space equals more room to run.
Yep.
More room to get open,
Yep.
which is all.
That's the thing. It's not just yak.
Exactly what you said. It's going to, if you have more room to get open. Now you get someone like a Deontay Johnson that's really great at creating separation, and and now he just even has more of a chance to get open if you're also worried about the run game. But it's not even just the run game; it's actually a threat of diverse play calling. Because you can say the more you can do, the more you can do, which I know sounds kind of redundant, but that's really what it is. The more you can do on offense, the more options that you have to do those things. And not only you have to be able to do them, and you also have to be willing to do them. And that's what we want to see from the Steelers this year, is that they are both willing and able to do a variety of things. I mean, the wide receivers were even getting involved in the run game early on. But my goodness, when you realize that the only time you're running certain motion plays, you are running the football 100% of the time, guess what teams do when you go in motion to do that? They sell out for the run.
Yeah.
It's just like when you brought in the jumbo package that we talked about 2 years ago. You're telegraphing, you're running the ball, and you're letting them completely load up to say, the Steelers are bringing the jumbo package, and who would they leave out there? Wide receiver? Johnny friggin' Holton. Who they were, and then we're gonna mix it up. We're gonna throw it out of the jumbo package. We better sneak James Washington in place of Johnny Holton. You don't think that the other team doesn't notice that? Did you put a different wide receiver out there? Of course they're then going to be sitting on it. Oh my goodness. It's like telegraph. I mean, Jeffrey Benedict pointed it out. Every time the Steelers run this motion, they are running the ball. They're doing the jet motion, handing it off to the wide receiver, things like that, which was the quote unquote Matt Canada stuff. The problem is Randy couldn't implement those things and not run the ball. And therefore everyone knew what they were doing. It can't be that way ever again. I can't believe someone like that could even call plays in high school, let alone in the NFL. I'm sorry. I'm going to stop now.
Well, like I said in the first half of the show, that's the same guy that called his receivers, they were like farts in a skillet.
They're like farts in a skillet. So, where do you think that the Steelers have one of the elite wide receiver cores, the whole room in the NFL?
I would say they have one of the deepest wide receiver cores.
Absolutely. That's why they're one of the best. I don't know of another team that is deeper at wide receiver. And that's why the Steelers drafting one would have almost been basically putting someone into a redshirt season this year.
Right.
So that's why it made sense to pass.
I look at it. You technically, in my opinion, you have four guys that could lead the team in receiving five if you throw Ebron in there, but I'm just saying wide receiver. You could have four that I would very much trust could lead the team in receiving any given week. Who'd I leave out?
Okay.
That question's for you.
Who?
I said there are 4 that I very much trust that could lead the Steelers any given week in receiving. Of the 5, which one am I not feeling would be that guy?
Ray.
Yeah.
Yeah. But honestly, I mean, he could lead the Steelers in rushing, when he busted off
Correct.
that 57-yard run and something like that.
Correct.
Honestly, Ray's not getting, I mean, I'd have to go back and try to look up stuff from last year. They're not throwing the ball downfield to Ray. They're handing it off or throwing it to him at or behind the line of scrimmage and letting him do something with his return abilities. He basically turned into, they asked him to fill the Ryan Switzer need. That's all they did. They weren't looking to get him the ball downfield when he was in the game.
Last year, between him run the ball, catching the ball some, return man, his all-purpose yards, that's what he's going to have. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he could lead a game in all-purpose yards.
Yeah. And that's not a knock on Ray. That's just how they implement him. He is correct. He is fantastic for the role that they have him in. He is that 5th wide receiver, although the Steelers, they didn't run 5 wides. And I did this as a trivia question for Jeff and Brian. This was probably almost 2 months ago on the preview. Was how many times was Juju Smith-Schuster, Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson, and James Washington, how many snaps did they have on the field together last year?
Oh, it was not a tremendously large amount. I remember I remember seeing that number at the end of the season.
It was 4 freaking snaps the whole season. Did you have your best 4 wide receivers on the field together? It was always with Ebron. Ebron was always, and it's not a knock on Ebron. And I know that people in the live chat are saying, "Oh, Ebron, he drops many passes." Ebron didn't start dropping his passes until he went over basically till he exceeded the number of snaps he had played in an NFL season. Up to that day, he had like 2 drop passes up to that point. But once he hit where he'd played more snaps than he ever had in an NFL season, he started dropping the ball. He wore down. He was injured. It was one of those things. So I'm not saying
week.
no bye week. Yeah, I'm not going to say he's going to come back and catch everything thrown his way. I'm not saying that, but I am saying he did get worn out, and I'm hoping he doesn't have to do that again this year. So. They invested in a tight end high, which was in the draft, I'm really, really happy they did that. So you're talking about, you got the couple tight ends. Pick. That was a luxury pick, but they needed another tight end.
That was the pick. Yeah, but that early in the draft, that was the luxury pick that they did by re-signing Juju, in my opinion. My opinion.
Yeah, they didn't have to go wide receiver.
Gave them some flexibility. They didn't need a wide receiver, so they got the second tight end.
And I'm going to say it because people still keep saying that was still a terrible pick because they could have had Creed Humphrey. You know what? I wanted Creed Humphrey. I wanted Creed Humphrey so bad that I even wanted him in the first round. I was fine with them taking him in the first round. But you know what? You know why the Steelers didn't draft Creed Humphrey? Because I'm telling you, I have no inside information. This is a gut feeling that I have. And my gut is enormous. It is bigger than any of your guts, probably most of them put together. So my gut feeling, I'm going to trust it. My gut feeling was...
You're going to stand up and show us the gut?
No, not today. Not today? My legs are... Dude, I'm not wearing any bottoms. No, I think I can't say that. That's not true. I'm wearing pajama shorts. But I will say this. Here's my gut feeling. Kendrick Green was higher on their board than Creed Humphrey.
Yes,
that's my gut feeling.
And they
nothing against Creed Humphrey. They really wanted Kendrick Green, and they knew round 2 was a reach. They knew round 4 was a possibility, but they thought, we want him this bad, we're taking him in 3. Yep. And after I looked into him, I'm like, he does fit what the Steelers do at center more than Creed Humphrey. And honestly, the only concern I had about Creed Humphrey was being left-handed. I don't know how Ben Roethlisberger would like that or not, but he's still not the puller that Green can be, in my opinion. So the Steelers, they have a different kind of center. It's what they do. And that's...
They went out and they looked and they identified their guy. knew when they could get their guy. I'm telling you, I think that,
They
again,
wanted Green more.
Here's my gut. It's a sizable gut too, not as sizable as yours.
Not as sizable as mine.
But I think the Steelers potentially built that draft around Kendrick Green.
Yeah.
I think they figured out when they could take him, and that at least played into the decisions they made in the first and second round.
Yeah. Yep.
Knowing that they were going to address that and get him in 3.
Yeah. Yeah. I still think it would be really interesting to see how the draft would have played out if Christian Darrisaw hadn't gone at 23.
Yeah. And I like that one.
Mm-hmm.
So Bert Tavares says if Green doesn't pan out at center, he can play guard. So that's a win-win. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So, and maybe Green isn't the guy. And see, but this is part of the reason that the point that I made in the whole thing with PFF, tearing up the Steelers draft and all that other stuff. Like I brought up the point that, last year the Steelers had the lowest draft grade in the AFC North. But then whenever they went and talked about after the season, that when they broke down the play of the rookies, the Steelers were 8th in the league. And that was really, really high considering they didn't have a first-round draft pick. Yep. They'd have had a first-round draft pick. If you would have taught, even if you gave them a half a score of Minkah Fitzpatrick, they're probably number 1. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Because without that pick, and they were that high, and yet PFF's golden team, it's funny because I think the Browns just do whatever analytics PFF use, and we're going to use that. And every year they get an A+ grade. And you know what? They were 19th last year with their draft class. And of course, Browns are A+ again this year. We'll see how it pans out. A lot of people like what they did, and I don't blame you. But the Steelers don't win the draft grades because they see things and act on things that other teams don't see. And they do it. They do it great with wide receiver, where they get those kind of guys, and they do it with other things. I'm hoping they did it with center, because think about it. The last time the Steelers drafted a center was Marquise Pouncey.
Yep.
That's it. You didn't have to draft one since then. So hopefully they know what they're doing. And the Steelers have known what they're doing so well with wide receiver. Honestly, probably the biggest, not necessarily knocking it out of the park pick they've had at wide receiver for a while was James Washington. And that's because he's not out there tearing it up flashy for everything, but he's still a good receiver. So I think this is one of the premier units. It's people talk about number ones and stuff like that. The Steelers don't truly have a number one. There is not like it is crunch time. There is one guy. We got to get him the ball when he's going to make us a play, because Ben knows he can throw it to Juju. He knows he can get it to Juju, sometimes too much. But he also trusts James Washington to rip it away. You've got Chase Claypool that's just shown that he's the next big thing. And then you've just got Deontay Johnson, who gets more targets than anybody because he gets open. So now, granted, he's struggled with the drops. He's there for a while, but he kind of got that straightened out mostly. So look at all that. You look at those options. Look at those options. That's not even counting the tight end. So the whole reason that I feel that the Steelers don't have a number one receiver is because they don't have to.
Correct.
Because they have so many other guys that are options that you want to take, because what do you know?
Right. You want to roll,
shut down the number one.
You want to roll coverage to this guy? Fine. We'll throw it
to this guy. We'll throw it to that guy, and that's a good strategy. I mean, that's exactly the strategy. When the Steelers did that with Chase Claypool against the Eagles did the same thing right back at the Steelers. Like, you want to keep covering this guy with him? We'll keep throwing it to this no name. I can't remember so much, so I can't remember his name now. The receiver
you said no name.
Started with an F. I remember that. Someone will tell me. I can't remember. That's all right. That did so well. So it's so funny. And it's not that I'm not saying, like, here, for an example, Jerry Cherry Brand says Brand. I said Brand again. Man, Jerry Cherry Band said Juju is our number one.
Too fast. Slow down.
Yeah. He says Juju is our number one. Fulgham, that was the guy's name. Thank you, Ryan Kellerman. I agree that Juju is the best, is your number one option at wide receiver. But I'm talking about, and I never bought into this, but I was sold on it mainly last offseason. What is classified as a number one and the aura around it and everything else, and that's all that. And it's being the number one guy on the Steelers doesn't mean that you're a number one receiver, but by what we've deemed that to be. And that's my point is it doesn't matter, if you got a number one receiver, they're going to get more targets than anyone. They're going to have more catches than everyone. They're going to have more yards than everyone else on your team every single week. And that's not going to, I don't think that's the Steelers because they don't need to work it that way. Anything else you want to say about the wide receivers, Rich, before we get into our big question?
Nope.
Because I wanted to give
we covered it pretty good.
I wanted to give some time for it.
I like the room. Love the wide receiver room.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's get those guys out there, continue to spread the ball around to them, and we'll be fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it. And is there concerns for 2022? Sure. But you know what? Let's play some 2021 ball. Because the last thing you want to do is go out and, try to do something and that you get the new offensive coordinator in, seeing how it works. I mean, that's why I think a lot of these guys, maybe that's part of the reason Juju did the 1-year deal, that it worked well for everybody. One, Ben Roethlisberger. 2, how's it going to work with Matt Canada? Then you're not stuck in there long term. It might be that these guys, after this year, they just want to get out. And it might be after this year that they know this is where I need to be. It also helps that the Steelers, as of right now, have a decent bit of cap space. But Trent Jordan Watt could really get into that by the time that's all said and done.
Yeah, he will.
So and I just think the other things that they added, the tight end, the running back in the draft at the top of the draft is just going to make the wide receivers even better. So here's our big question. Of course, it's going to be about wide receiver. I'm going to pose it to you. I got to go over the rules with everybody again because there's always some people. I'm going to start.
Follow the rules.
I'm really tempted to start giving timeouts to people and make them have to wait 5 minutes to comment again if they break the rules. But no, I'm not going to be like that because it's fun. And some of you want to break the rules just to mess with me. And
that's funny. You said that. Now I'm going to start sticking them timeout there. I'm going to think it's you.
They're going to think it's me. Hey, if that happens, I'm calling you out on it.
And I'm going to deny it.
I'm going to ask the question. Rich is going to answer it. I'm going to answer it. I will turn it over to you all. When you see it in the live chat, type in your answer. I'm not looking for a long answer. I'm looking for, it's a 1-word or 2-word answer. You'll see it. You'll understand it when the question comes. Don't give me 2 answers. Give me 1 answer. You don't even need an explanation. And we'll bring it up here. And this is the question. I'm going to let you answer it while I work on typing it in. And that is, at the conclusion of the 2021 NFL season, the member of the Pittsburgh Steelers with the most receiving yards will be yards. You
ready?
Yep.
For some of the reasons I mentioned earlier, I feel it is going to be Deontay Johnson. Between the hopefully improved running game and threat of a running game, giving him more space to work on the field to get open.
People, you can just stop now. You can start issuing the timeouts now. Yeah, go for it.
Boom.
Timeout. So there you go.
So I say it's going to be Deontay. Because he's going to be able to get open easier, and he's also going to have a little more space to turn on the jets for some more yak.
Yeah.
So, how about yourself?
I could see that. Honestly, I was going to wait to see who you picked, and I was going to pick someone else.
Cheater.
just for variety. I am going to go with, believe it or not, I think I'm going to go with one, Juju Smith-Schuster.
Yeah, I can see that too, because he's the other one whose yak numbers can go way up.
And the thing is, he might lead the Steelers in receiving yards, and only have 3 or 4 games where he leads them in yards in the game. I just think he's going to be up there every game, consistent. And there might be games where DJ goes crazy. There might be games where Claypool goes crazy. Maybe Juju has a game or two where he goes nuts. But he's going to be there week after week after week. So now everyone's waiting now that they realize that they jumped the gun. So here we go. Coming into the chat now, we are going to see what everyone else thinks of who will lead the Steelers in receiving yards in 2021. So now everyone's going to wait because the last thing they want to do is get scolded again. So here we go already. Very first one. Stacy Lynn says Juju. Makes sense. Okay. Garrett says Chase Claypool. Could totally see that coming on in his second season. See if he builds on his rookie year. Okay. Ryan, Deontay Johnson. Okay. Ezra says me. No, that was about me calling people out beforehand and everything. So Jerry says Juju. We'll leave it at that. Steelers Pittsburgh says Juju Smith-Schuster. Wow, I jumped on me. Let's go. I'll come back to that one. Kathy Forden says Claypool. Jeff Lauderdale says Juju. Tyler W says Claypool. Big shots down the field. I almost went with Claypool over Juju.
I know.
I thought that he could maybe get multiple 50-yard receptions in games, which would be crazy. Marvin says Johnson. You can see that. Okay. Jerry Cherry, I got to skip whenever people have. Okay. What is this one?
I don't know.
He's after awesome stuff.
Bussy, just kidding. Deontay.
Just kidding. Deontay.
So,
yep.
yeah.
So that's funny. I almost didn't do it because I thought he gave multiple answers. And then I realized that's not what he did. Okay. Jerry Cherry Plant says Claypool, who is unstoppable. Okay. Here we go. Donald Nolan. I like this. Deontay. Someone take a screenshot. 1,375 yards. Oh, I would love that. Okay. Andrew Wilbar says Mapletron. That would be, of course, our one friend from the north, Chase Claypool. Portna says, I repeat, Isaiah McCoy. That's one of the undrafted free agents that the Steelers signed, if I'm not mistaken. That going with the dark horse, going with the long shot. Jeff Dunn says Claypool. Moneybag says Juju. Okay. Kathy says right. Juju might catch more balls, but Claypool more yards. She was replying to someone, which I thought, that's a really good point.
That might be her responding to you and what you said. So.
Because Donald says that I'm like a pet owner that dangles a treat in front of dog's face, then scolds them for going for the treat. You gotta train them. You gotta. No, my family has their first dog. We've had her for a few months. Her name is Skywalker. I should have said that last week when we did our Star Wars stuff. And she graduated puppy kindergarten. She's moving on to her other puppy stuff, and she's working on Leave It. And that's what I do. I have to dangle treats in front of her face and say, nope, leave it. Leave it. Leave it. Okay, go get it. And that's what I have to do with you all too. So you're exactly right, Donald. That was pretty good. That's funny. Okay. I'm going to bring it up, although it's breaking the rules, just because I like it. Because Ezra says most yards.
You let it. No.
Claypool, what? Receiving yards, Juju.
Putting a treat in front of your dog and then not making them wait and letting them go get it. Come on.
No, just because it was just something that added to the discussion.
I like Andrew.
Yep.
Andrew says Claypool 1,376 yards.
Oh, I love it. You guys are too much. Yep. So mine skipped on me here. Because Ezra was saying, more catches. And I didn't ask catches. We asked yards because we talked about this before the show about which one we were going to do. So there we go. I don't know that anyone else actually has just a name because I think we ran through a lot of them really fast. Yeah. So what's interesting is no one said James Washington. Nobody said James Washington. And
Washington will not lead the team in yards.
I don't think he will. Now I'm trying to remember. He did lead the team in 2019. Was it, I can't remember, was it yards or was it receptions? He led the league in one of, or not the league, he led the team in one of them. He led them in yards, but not receptions.
Not receptions.
So he already, he already has led the Steelers in receiving yards for a season. But remember, Juju was injured with things there. And yeah, so which don't forget that James Washington did do that. So this has been a lot of fun. This was nice talking about something that kind of was not addressed in the draft and why it wasn't, and looking at it moving forward for next year. I'm really excited about the schedule. I really want to know. I want to know who the Steelers open up against. I want to know who they finish off against. I want to know where the bye week is, all that stuff. We'll have all the coverage.
I want to know which games I got to try to,
get to.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I don't like home games on Thursday nights. Although the home team has a major advantage, I don't like having tickets to it that no one wants to go to the game. But that's just me.
I'll go to the game with you.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. we went to it. Which was that the Titans game? Yeah,
that was the Titans game. That was the Dilly Dilly game.
That was the Dilly Dilly game. We were there. That was that. Oh man, that was a shellacking. That was great. So we've got all that coming. Make sure you check it out behindthesteelcurtain.com, your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers. We will continue to break down the draft picks. We will continue with all the various news and everything going up until you've got mini camp coming up soon, and then you'll get that lull, and then training camp will be upon us before we know it. And then we'll be talking about some real football at the beginning of August. I mean, even though it's preseason football, I don't care. I don't care. I want to see these guys on the field. I want to see what they can do.
Right.
And for those of you, if you might have missed at the beginning, program note, tomorrow night will not be the Steelers curtain call. It will be the Steelers preview to preview the schedule release. Curtain call will be on Thursday night. All our shows are running on their regular times otherwise. Hopefully you all know the schedule by now. And we will, of course, next Tuesday be right back here talking about more stuff dealing with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Anything you want to close out with, Rich, before we truly close out?
No, just again, we're getting into the fun time of year right now. Once that schedule gets done, then I'll really start thinking about, headed to Heinz Field for games, and then I'll really start getting excited. So
exactly. Yeah, it's the excitement is building. I mean, it's really exciting with the draft, then it calms a little bit, and now it's starting that crescendo. You're building up with that. Here it comes.
The schedule.
You've got it.
Yeah.
The whole notion of at least 51,000 people in Heinz Field. That's fantastic. We'll know exactly what games we can go to. We'll get the tickets, all that information. We'll know it all by the time we get here next Tuesday night. So make sure you're tuned in. You know what you're doing, because we've got a lot coming.
Can't wait.